8 things you didn't know, but you should know of what you could do with attribution. Um, Attribution has been in every channel. It's been on LinkedIn. It's been in all of the communities. And the sentiment right now about attribution is either first touch, last touch, multi-touch, or it doesn't work, right? So those are your 4 choices. But sometimes you come across someone who really figured out a really nice way of utilizing a data model, attribution being one of those, for things that you may not have necessarily thought about. So with this, I would love to introduce today's guest. Liz Dolan is a friend of mine, and I saw Liz on LinkedIn sharing her know-how of what she does with data. And I was so wowed. I was like, Liz, I'm Nadia Davis, and I would love to have you on Hitchhiker's Guide for you to tell the world what you do. Liz, over to you. Introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Liz. I am your marketing attribution obsessed little person over here. Right now, I work at Fleetworthy. I head up the marketing operations team there. Also have my own little business called Course Concepts. Um, yeah, and I've been doing this for 10 years, and I got to spend a lot of time looking at a lot of marketing attribution data, and I'm really happy that I get to share some of that with you guys.
Liz, do you remember the first question I asked you when we did our little conversation about what this could be? I said, "What's your major in?" And what did you
Oh,
say?
yeah, I majored in mathematics, so I come by all of this data analysis honestly, and spent a very, very long time doing it.
And this is an interesting, like, the reason I asked that, because like the next couple of slides, and I will tee up this topic. I don't want to steal the show because this is your show, but I want to tee up this topic because there's a certain angle that, I have noticed, being in the MarTech space, kind of talking to people, watching people, I noticed this trend where because the science of, or rather the field of marketing is so split between art and science, right? We're there to drive engagement. We're there to
Yeah.
make our brands and offerings memorable. We're there for people to get really excited about user experiences, right? And that's what marketing historically has been known for and has been successful at. But there's the other side, the math side, right? And unless you can show what it is that you do, especially in the remote world, like what you do day to day and show it in graphs and charts and dashboards, it's really hard to convince the business about your impact and what marketing does around here. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that is a fair assessment. And I think one of the things I have a problem with in attribution often is that it gets kind of set up to prove that marketing is doing something. And I find that that's if they don't trust you that marketing is doing something, showing them marketing attribution isn't going to convince them of that either. You really need to have kind of an internal PR to your external departments at your company to really say, like, we're doing something. And that attribution data should really be used by marketing to optimize what you're doing. If you're trying to use it to just convince people that you're doing something, you're not going to be using it to the best of its abilities.
And part of the challenge too, and there's you, by the way, that little 10%, that's you, right? 1 in 10 marketers actually have background in data so they can, dig in the numbers and build models, right? And understand and interpret the contextual nuances of the models. 1 in 10, we got that number from Gartner, have degrees in computer science, statistics, economics, or mathematics, right? Everybody
Mhm,
within the world of marketing, at least within the survey that Gartner did, right? You have more traditional marketing background, whether it's communication,
mhm.
whether it's, English, maybe it's marketing as a major, right? Which is different because I feel like, especially today, the challenge is very much to navigate that data. And like what you were saying, to build the narrative, to convince people that are very much, closer to the numbers, and show them that what you did not just justifies you being there, but also indicates that you should do this or that, the so what. I think that's what people struggle with sometimes. And attribution is just like a byproduct of, you have to have something that you're mad at. Attribution is it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And another stat that I think is very helpful, kind of building up this narrative, to your point, because you have finance, because you have sales that live in the world of black and white numbers. I mean, you either have pipeline or you do not. You
Mhm.
either have revenue or you do not. Investors give you money, it's either red or black, right? You either got it in
Yeah.
or you spent it. And 80%, another Gartner stat, right? 80% of CMOs cannot prove their ROI. And I don't think it's because
Mhm.
there's no ROI. I think it's, again, back to the challenge with having too much data, not being able to put it together in ways that are meaningful, maybe not even knowing what questions to ask. And I'm super excited. I feel like today you very much will shed some light on all that.
Yeah, I think that's true. ROI can be really hard to prove, and a lot of times it is looking at that total number and not getting lost in the weeds of every individual campaign. Um, because at the highest level, that's not the most helpful. You want that total number. You want that total influence, total originated number to really leverage to convince finance or any other or sorry, numbers based department that what you're doing is helpful.
And I feel like part of that is also that the narrative also stems from the notion of, especially for PE and VC backed companies. And my last three companies were P backed, and right now we're in a VC backed company. So I see that all the time. Like your board is not, in a lot of cases, made up of marketers. As a matter of fact, I think Insight Partners has one marketer on their board, so that person has the voice of marketing. But in a lot of cases, it's finance
Mhm.
people, it's bankers. So when they say, I'm going to give you X amount of money, or you're asking for X amount of money, what will we get out of that? Just like you plan your retirement, like you plan your investments, like there's
Mhm.
very clear math behind it. And to convince these people that brand matters, that paying forward to tomorrow matters, that, long-term investment matters. Like, what do you mean long-term? Chat GPT will change the world in 2 months. And you're asking me for a 12-month or 24-month type of thing, right?
Yeah.
I feel like all of this and the technology and the shifting North Star and shifting KPIs contribute to the notion where you just stand still because you don't know what to do next.
Yeah. I think that's a fair assessment. Um, and yeah, the patience is hard. A lot of times with marketing, you're telling them, so you have to wait 6 months for this to actually matter. You have to wait a year for this to actually impact the numbers, and no one wants to wait that long when, your sales team can adjust things in days or weeks.
Remember when you were a kid and you were waiting for Christmas and it just seemed like Christmas is just light years away? It will never happen. I feel
Yeah.
like that's where we are today. So here's the big A word. When I say attribution, some of you probably came here with a gripe thinking, what else can be said about attribution? I hate it doesn't work, right? Other people are like, let me see what I can tell to my counterpart in my team, right? But in most cases, I feel like the sentiment is, we're proving what we're doing here in marketing. That's one path. Then you completely disregard it because that's just not the path you're taking. You've been there, you've done that, you've seen that movie. It's not interesting. Fair. Or you go to the one size fits all. So can you just tell me what model works? Like, I don't care about all of the nuances. Just tell me that one thing and I will go and turn it on my HubSpot instance. And this simplification, I feel like, doesn't really pave the path to what we could do with data modeling because many other data models out there. Finance does data modeling. Your pipeline forecast, by the way, is a data model. So there's no one model for that one, right? You have to customize it. But I'm curious about your take on this. This came from Benchmark. This was a report that they released last year, and they took different company sizes. And speaking of that one model, right? They said, what attribution model do you use if you use it? Turns out lots of people are using it. It's not dead for a bunch of people. And what's interesting here, and I'm happy to give my take, and I would love for you to comment on this, or maybe you see something else in these numbers, right? You take really small guys, companies under $5 million. You're like, wow, they're using multi-touch attribution. Then you go to 5 to 20 that, kind of growth companies. They're using inbound. And by inbound, people mean sourced. You go to that kind of early hyper growth companies, 20 to 50 million, kind of get into that mid market. Last touch, what matters to them. And then it changes, right? And what I think is true here for the little guys, like, why is it multi touch? I think it's because they use whatever free tool that they got, most likely HubSpot, and they just turned on that module. So they said, what are you using? Oh, we're using multi touch because that's what the software that they got has. For the 5 to 20 million they're using inbound, most likely it's because they're trying to grow the team and they're trying to figure out how much marketing is bringing, how much sales is bringing. So they're using that as a hiring lever to understand how many people they need to bring to the team because they're growing and it's usually probably messy at that 5 million to 20 million point. Then the company 20 to 50 million are driven by revenue. So to them, they want to know, and I'm not saying that's the right model, I'm just kind of hypothesizing what drives this belonging to one of the other model. They probably want to know what triggers revenue creation. So it's last touch. What tips the scale to generate pipe? Then bigger guys, first touch. Like, why is that? It's because they're probably trying to break into new markets and expand their reach and break into new segments. So to them, what matters is that marketing gets them into new areas where nobody knew about them. So it's brand awareness in a lot of cases so they can grow, right? That's first touch. And then you go to enterprise and it's multi-touch all the way. So what's your take on this? Am I off?
Yeah, so I've actually given talks about this before. So have some very strong opinions. I think
We love
the
opinions.
I think the reason that small companies use this is that you need to grow that influence. So if you're a brand new company, marketing has zero influence on pipeline. Absolutely none. It's hard to take that and then say, "Oh, we originated this," because your sales team is calling everyone and anyone. And if you get anything in the door, any tiny little thing, they're going to call the entire list. And so there's no kind of tailoring or optimizing that, right? Anything marketing brings in, an event, any list, immediately everyone's getting called because it's new. And so what you're trying to build there is proving we did something on these deals. And you're going to have like no multi-touch attribution influence at all. And what you're trying to do there is prove that you're doing something. And I always say, kind of, you want to reach that point where you're at, I don't know, maybe 70% plus influence before you start looking at anything else. Because you need to show, hey, I'm doing something, and that something matters, it's impactful, it's hitting the business. And then you switch over to that model of last touch or inbound, where you're saying, okay, this is what's happening right before it goes to sales. I'm also going to say, I don't like first touch. I think multi touch is going to be a better first touch. Um, and I can talk about that later. But last touch to me says this is when it goes to sales. And I think that's an important inflection point. It says, this is when we've done all of this marketing stuff. And we're saying, hey, go talk to a sales rep. And that's something you can track. You can say, hey, I sent them at this time and it converted well or it didn't. And that's what that really needs to be as a last touch, is telling you, was this really ready for sales or wasn't it? And then for internal optimization, for telling the company, hey, we did stuff, we're having impact on that pipeline. That's when multi-touch comes in. And I layer in first touch because there's a lot of times where that first touch isn't actually impactful and it doesn't matter. It's just showing you that they entered the system through marketing, which can be valuable. You can say, like, hey, this is converting better because they came in through marketing. But I think it's more helpful to say they're converting better because they engaged with marketing, regardless of if that's their first touch or not. And so that's why I kind of put multi-touch over first touch, because you can get a bit more information there. Um, so yeah, that's kind of my opinion. I think at some point you need origination to show, hey, this is how it got to sales, because you start discerning. You stop sending every little individual thing. And then you're going to layer that with multi-touch to understand what you're doing and how that matters and how you can optimize. Because a lot of times you can't optimize last touch, right? A demo request. How do I get more demo requests? You need to look at multi-touch to figure that out.
You could pay for the answer to that question.
Yes.
And in a lot of cases, that's very much the number of what the rest of the business suite cares about, right? And we got a couple of slides again from Benchmark It of what people actually measure and what they set as their KPIs. Like PipeGen is one of those things. Well, 6 and 10 measure, or as of last year, right? 6 and 10
Mhm.
measure PipeGen. Some people cannot, and this is very much where the methodology of how do I convert engagement into dollars in my mind of attribution kind
Mhm.
of plays in, right? So attribution still matters to a lot of people. They use it just fine. It's not dead. Then people count number of opportunities. I understand why. It's probably easier, right? And then you kind of see the diminishing returns for the other KPIs. But then you kind of look at the things that people could also do, but they may not be equipped to do that. And that's more advanced metrics,
Mhm.
where you start looking at the cost per, hard to measure, hard to operationalize and all that stuff. And in a lot of cases, what you measure really depends on what your business is interested in, because you want to give answers to the
Mhm.
questions that your CFO is asking, and you wanna figure out all of the nuts and bolts. The Somebody told me it's unsexy stuff. That's the stuff that you, Nadia, do on Saturdays. I'm like, "Wow, that's a slap on the face," but whatever, right? Like, all of the non-fun things to make all of this work. And I think at this point, Elizabeth, I would love to know what you do, and kinda what your framework of discovering all of those questions and nuances is.
Yeah. I mean, we can jump into this too, but I think a lot of times it's taking your data and it's looking at it a little bit differently. It's not going for that traditional kind of approach. And again, a lot of this is to optimize. This is to know, okay, what I'm doing, this is how I improve it. This is how I make it better. Um, and a lot of this that I'm going to show you really breaks into that, what does it matter and what can we actually see with this data? I think a lot of times we get pigeonholed into those metrics, right? Into the cost per an opportunity, cost per lead. When at the end of the day, maybe that's not what's moving the needle. Because I'll be pretty honest up front, what I care about is bookings. I care about the company getting bookings, and that's always what I'm optimizing towards, because at the end of the day, you can reach your marketing pipeline number, and if the business is not netting bookings, if they're not making money, you're still out of a job. And so that's why I kind of consistently optimize towards that bookings number, and you'll see that in what I'm showing today as well. So I see the value of all of those metrics. But I think one of the best things you can do as marketing, and one of the best things you can do to prove marketing, is saying, hey, we improved that bookings rate. We improved the bookings rate of our marketing pipeline, because that is so much more impactful than saying we brought in 10% more pipeline. Because you can say, hey, I converted better. And now not only do I have more bookings, but I have better conversion rates than without marketing, than sales. Um, and this is just a little bit like, if you don't know attribution models, if you haven't really engaged with them, there is first touch, which says, hey, however they entered the system, that's what matters. That's what counts. Last touch means whatever they did right before the opportunity was opened, that's what matters, 100% of the credit. Linear is everything on the entire journey gets equal weighting. This is my best friend. This is what I live and die by. Um, anything you look at that I've done is linear attribution. U shape says like you pick two touch points, right? First and last, they get everything. 100% gets split 50-50. And W shaped kind of has a few inflection points, and then it'll say everything else gets whatever percent. So you can say first gets 30%, middle gets 20, last gets 30, and then the rest, the other 20% gets divided evenly among what's left. The reason I don't love those is that you don't actually know that those are the points that matter, or those are the points that are impactful on that journey. You're just kind of guessing that those are the most important ones. And I don't really like guessing things. I really like to walk in with no assumptions, which is again why I use that linear model, right? Saying everything is exactly the same. And then I get to look at that data that way and then decide from there. And then now we have some ICP validation. So one of the ways I do this, and you're going to hear me mash together data in a lot of this, but if you look at your attribution data and you look at who is engaging, right? Who is engaging the most? That is when you're going to find out that ICP. That's when you're going to find out the person who is actually driving that buying decision. And we all know that sales doesn't 100% put every single person that matters on every single opportunity through contact roles. If your salespeople do that, you should be ecstatic. But a lot of times they don't. They're trying to get that deal done fast. And so you'll kind of sit there and be like, wait, but who did they talk to? And this is a great way to say that. This is a great way to say, okay, this person is engaging the most on these opportunities, on these accounts. You copy them, you say, okay, let me grab that title, let me grab that information I have about them, and then say, okay, this is the most common. This is the most often people I'm seeing. And now you know, okay, these are the people I have to talk to. And this goes a little bit into your buying groups as well, which is saying, okay, now I know the person I'm targeting the most important person I'm talking to. Now you say, okay, but who is everyone I'm talking to? Because today, essentially, if you're going to anyone who's above an SMB, you probably have multiple people that are impacting that decision. Um, it's very rare that someone gets to say, hey, this is what I want, and we're buying it right now. Um, that's just not very common because you'll have people who are using the platform. You'll have different people who are paying for the platform, and you'll have different people who influence that decision or are in other departments that care about that software. So this will really give you an idea, right? Adding in that information of title, like what department they are in, to say, okay, not only do I know the person who's engaging the most, who's that important ICP person, now I can see, okay, not only am I getting, for example, the CMO, I'm also getting the head of marketing operations. I'm also getting the demand gen person. I'm also getting the head of digital. And now not only are you targeting that one person who was most important to you, now you can see, okay, this is the entire buying group, and these are the people I need to influence. And you can also start tailoring your message that way, right? This is the person I need to get the ultimate buy in from. This is the person I'm going to target to get that demo request, get them to be the final person to talk to sales. And these are all the people I need to talk to and say, hey, know about our product. Have you seen this really interesting thing we can do? Have you looked at this blog post or this webinar? Because we don't necessarily need to get them to do that demo request. We just need to get them to engage and know the product and feel comfortable using it. Because they're not necessarily the main ICP, but they're the people who are in that buying decision. And again, you're going to do this by taking that data in, adding it to all of the touch points that are happening, and saying, okay, what happens the most? What are the things that are happening most often? Just times done, and that's what you're looking for. It sounds really easy. It really is relatively easy to do. But I think a lot of people forget that your multi touch attribution data can do so much more than tell you that pipeline, the influence pipeline dollar next to that channel. And this is one of the ways you can do that. Next, lead scoring. So when I think about lead scoring, my number one thing I do is I look at my multi-touch attribution data and I order the touch points. So I'll say this is first, second, third, from uh, oldest to newest, and then most recent to oldest. And when I'm looking at that most recent to oldest, I will look at, okay, what are the things they did beforehand and in what time frame? And this is when you can really break down that process. So at one company I was at, if someone clicked 3 emails in 5 weeks, they were going to talk to sales. They wanted to talk to sales at that point. They were engaged enough to talk to sales. And we saw that happen on marketing originated pipeline, but also just sales pipeline that they called at the right time. And so we knew, okay, when that happens, we have to send them over. And also, that wasn't happening at any other point in their journey. right? We didn't have a lot of people clicking on 3 emails in 5 weeks, but when they did, they wanted to talk to sales. They were about to open an opportunity. That was the trigger point that said, "Oh, okay, they're really interested." And again, that's where you find that last touch is really helpful because then you can look at that lead scoring and say, "Oh, okay, my lead scoring conversion rate did increase when I updated based on this attribution model." And I looked at, okay, these are the most common things. And to some degree, in what order, in what time frame. So what are the things happening a month before, 2 months before? And again, in that time frame, the 3 in 5 weeks, and then in the how often it was happening. So again, 3 times. And that's one of the things I found that's really helpful with lead scoring and being able to go in and give that um, point attribution rather than necessarily doing it based off of the conversion rate when that is the last touch, which a lot of times can be how we're doing that lead scoring model. And then pipeline acceleration. So this is looking at what is happening that's leading to faster pipeline. And the way you're going to do this, and you're going to see me say this over and over and over again, which is compare information to each other. The data you have in your system, all you want to do is take that and compare it to each other. So what you're going to look at is, okay, this is my time to book from pipeline to bookings. And you're going to break that down by channel. And you're going to say, when someone engages with this channel, when they have a webinar in their journey, not what point, just if it exists or not, this is how fast they close. If they have this channel, this is how fast they close. If they have this channel, this is how fast they close. And if you want to speed up that deal, you're going to say, okay, these are the channels that are closing fastest when they engage with the person net at all. And so I'm going to try and get people to engage with that more often in order to get that deal to be faster. And once you get really sophisticated, you can start layering in, okay, did they do this and that together? Um, and get to that kind of next level. But to start with, just look at, okay, they engaged with this and it's a faster deal cycle. And so that will help you say, okay, I can get from pipeline to bookings faster when they're engaging with these channels because you're just taking the time comparing again and again and again for each channel. And this is also how you increase win rates. You do that same exact thing. You say, okay, this channel, when they engage with it, has a better win rate. The other thing I found that can be really helpful with win rates is timing. So looking at if the person first engages within 1 month before the opportunity is created, what's the booking rate? 3 months before, what's the conversion rate? 6 months before, what's the conversion rate? More than 6 months before, what's the conversion rate? And at one of the companies I worked at, if we engaged with someone more than 6 months before, our bookings rate was double. So now it doesn't really matter to me what they do. It matters that they're engaging with us 6 months beforehand because that's what matters. Getting that double booking rate, that didn't happen with any of the channel engagements. That happened with time. And so now I'm saying, okay, I need 6 months before. Now let me look at that attribution data. What channels are they engaging with the most 6 months beforehand? And now that's my optimization. That's what I care about. That's what's going to improve my win rate. And I'm going to double down on every single channel that is happening 6 months beforehand. And maybe those are some of your first touch channels, but that's also what you want to see is 6 months beforehand. And you can start cutting your data all these different ways, not just channel, not just campaign, but you can look at the buyer group. If I have this person, do I get a better win rate? If they're engaged, do I get a better win rate? If the time frame is better, do I get a better win rate? Literally think of every single way you can possibly segment your data and compare those win rates to each other. Sometimes it means nothing, but sometimes you get a really helpful nugget of information. And you also find that this isn't the same across any company you work at. These can be really individualized to your company, your buyer journey. And so that's how you can really increase that win rate by looking at it just in different ways. And again, comparing to what is happening in the past. And again, this is just kind of moving that needle. Um, and again, combination of the tactics and personas to get you there. And this is kind of a visualization of how you can look at that. So if we look at, okay, there's a win, this is what it looks like on average for a one deal. And I think what it has here are events are a part of the one deal. Then if we look at the closed lost, there's no events. So suddenly we know, hey, events really matter. Those are on closed won deals and they're not on closed lost. So now you can say, okay, I need to get people to go to events. And it's not when they go to the event, it's that they do it at all. So now that's what you need to push. You just need people to go. Whenever they go, get them to really engage with that channel. Make that a priority because clearly people want to engage with you that way. That's a deep engagement for them, and that's a memorable one.
And I will comment on that. When I used to make those slides by hand, and it is really, really hard to put all of the touch points on one slide where you show how many things happened. And then once you bring this up to the sales team, like, look at this and look at that. You're just telling the story. You're not making anything else up. You're not convincing or converting. But people start noticing that difference in color, which you were showing, Elizabeth. It's like the
Mhm,
deals that we win have these type of touches, and this is the intensity of how many of those happen and when. And the deals that
mhm,
we lose have this different makeup of colors and timeline. Do you guys want to win more deals or do you
yep,
want to lose more? Like, this is what you do.
yeah,
People believe you. You don't have to
yep.
say it again.
True, true. And I think the other thing that's really helpful with that too is if you go to sales and you say, "Hey, we need webinars, we need events." Now, when you give them those templates to invite people to webinars and events, suddenly they're going to use them because that matters. They're also going to engage a little bit more on webinars and especially event show floors if they know that matters, if they know like that's how we win. Once you're getting everyone aligned because they do care about that win rate. They do care about that bookings. That's how they get paid. Not on the pipeline you're giving them or they're creating. And so once we optimize towards that, everyone's on the same team. Once they see that that's the bookings and those are the things that matter, they're going to double down on that because you can't also just say, oh, everything marketing does matters. If you can give them a specific thing that they can really focus on and help, they're going to do it. They're going to want to do that if they know it's improving that bookings rate. It's getting more money in their pockets because we all want more money in our pockets. You can't tell me that anyone who's working doesn't want more salary doing the job they're doing. I won't believe you. And next we have velocity. So this is going to be the time between those touch points and if it matters. So do you need people engaging every month? Do you need people engaging every week? And a lot of times you'll see that impact when they should talk to sales. So you might at the start see people engaging every 2 months. And then when they start engaging every week, that's when they're ready to book. Or if you get consistent touches every month, those people are more likely to convert. And you're just going to look at those time between, those velocity, and how quickly they're getting there to help you decide is does that matter? And that can also help you as a marketing team prioritize your time. Do I need to be getting people to do something every week, right? I need email engagement pretty consistently. Okay, well, I'm going to send my emails 2 a week every week. Or is it webinars that need to be consistent? Okay, now I know it's important for me to do a webinar every month, every 6 weeks. You might find it's important to do it every 3 months. And now you've taken a whole ton of work off of your marketing webinar team's hand and say, okay, we need these this far apart. And now you can take that time and energy and put it towards something that happens more often or needs to happen more often. And I would say again, don't kind of come with this preconceived idea of what it is, because a lot of times you might think, okay, well, I need lots of email touches, or I need to be having that webinar every month. It might really be that you don't. Or you find out, hey, I need to go to more events. We were doing one a quarter, and like that was too far apart. When we were doing them every month, we started seeing more conversion, and we were seeing people again and again and again at those events, and that mattered. So you're going to want to look at that time between as another kind of way. And again, you're going to look at that time between. You're going to say, did I get better bookings rate? Did I get there faster? Is that what mattered? Because again, I'm going to tell you, I kind of always return to that bookings rate and then faster to book, because we all want to get to that bookings number. That's the best thing for the company. And again, if you can prove that you're doing that as marketing, hey, I improved your win rate, I improved this, everyone's listening. You suddenly have a lot more buy-in than when you were showing them, hey, here's our marketing influence pipeline, and this is the breakdown of the channels. And at companies, I've been able to increase that win rate. I think at one point I did it by 4 points. So we went from 10 to 14%. Everyone was looking and everyone was bought in all of a sudden. Everyone knew marketing was doing something important, and that conversation never came up again, because we were able to say, look, marketing improves your win rates. If we engage at all, you're going to do better. And now suddenly everyone wants to have marketing engaged in that conversation because they know it's going to win the deal. We're not just making pipeline for them. We're not just sending over leads. We're getting them the bookings. We're getting them that win rate. And then this is one of my favorite things to do. So again, we segment. We look at that data a million different ways. And what you can do is when you're looking at spend, you can look at that breakdown and you can say, hey, this buyer group engages on this platform, this paid platform, and this one doesn't. So if we look at it overall, we might look and say, wow, we're not getting a lot of engagement out of LinkedIn, but we are Facebook. And then you break it down and you're like, oh, actually, that's because the majority of our buyers are SMB and they really engage on Facebook. But if I look at our enterprise buyers, oh, they're really engaging on LinkedIn and we're getting a lot of conversion there. So now you can say, okay, well, let me break down my budget. I'm going to take that enterprise budget, whatever I was trying to do to hit those larger things in Facebook, I'm going to take all that money away there, going to put it all towards Facebook. For the enterprise, I'm going to take every single cent I can away from Facebook and put it towards that LinkedIn, because that's what matters to those segments. And a lot of times, if you do that, if you redistribute that way, you don't actually have to put any more money into those channels. You've just optimized between channels and you can improve that. At places I've seen a 6% improvement in marketing influence pipeline just by redistributing there, by saying, okay, this person likes to engage on this platform and this person doesn't. So let's optimize towards that. Let's split that spend. And now suddenly you're getting more from that same spend just by looking at the people engaging, saying, okay, here they go. We need to put them here. And this is where we need that person to engage, because you always want to meet their buyer where they are. They're not going to start going to LinkedIn because you're doing ads there. They're either on LinkedIn or they're not. And you want to make sure you're optimizing towards that. And I feel like LinkedIn for enterprise and Facebook for SMB kind of feels obvious, but that's my example. You're going to find some weird things in there. You might find your enterprise is always engaging on Reddit. And once you look at the data, once you start segmenting it, all the crazy ways you can think of, that's when you start seeing pieces like this. And you can say, okay, I'm going to put my spend there. I'm going to put it there. Because now you're not just looking at that, okay, channel, pipeline, and information, breaking it down. And so now we get to definitions, my favorite thing to talk about. When you're looking at this data, you need definitions. And this isn't necessarily for everyone else as much as it is for yourself. If you're going in here and looking at this influence data once a quarter, that's probably right. These things don't tend to change a lot very quickly. And also, I'm asking you to go in and take your opportunity data and add in all of your company attributes and all of your campaign attributes and all of your person attributes to cut all of your data in all of these crazy ways, right? By campaign, by persona, by company size. So really pull that together, do that like once a quarter. I would do this and I would say, hey, this is my week to do attribution. Don't bother me. And for the most part, people actually didn't. Um, so make sure you're taking all of that information, categorizing it, and remember it for yourself. Say, okay, this is what this meant. This is how I created that metric. And this is what I categorized as this campaign, this segment, this whatever. Because you think to yourself, I'll remember it. Probably won't. And you'll probably go back and try and figure it out in your old spreadsheet. And it's really hard. It's hard to do that as someone who has done that many, many times. This is just experience that I'm trying to help you with. So write everything down, keep track of it, and say, okay, this is what I use for this definition. And then when someone comes to you at the end of it and you're doing your lovely presentation and everyone's bought in and they say, well, what does that mean? You have a very nice handy little document and you can say, this is the definition I use. If you want to look at the definition for everything else, here is my document. But to start with, this is for you. This is so you know, and you're not making the mistake quarter after quarter and having to go back and look at every single formula you made. Additionally, keep those little formulas. If you are using an Excel document, which I used every single quarter, I literally made a giant Excel and VLOOKUPed everything into it to get all of the crazy information for me to cut these segmentations. And I would literally save Excel formulas so I could copy and paste them in and do the analysis again. So I didn't have to write them. I cannot tell you. Sometimes I had formulas that were like 8 lines long, but they were really helpful. So I kept them and then I would just bring them back in because those files are really enormous and trying to have both open and copy over that information is really difficult. The other thing I'm going to bring up, which is really important to me as a little math nerd, as a math major, is statistical significance. So you want a population that's large enough and you want that difference to matter. So I've seen this happen a million times. I had a lift report, and that is when you compare the two bookings rates for channels and say, okay, if they have this channel, this is this is the win rate, and if they don't, this is the win rate, and this is the difference between the two. And this is saying I need to do this channel more because people who do this win. Someone came to me and they were like, hey, this paid channel is like 6 times. When we get them to click on this type of ad, this type of display ad, it's 6 times. And I go in there and I look and I'm like, okay, so this has happened 3 times. And it hasn't happened on, the other 200 deals that did not have this. And so that small number means that that's probably not really accurate. It would be really exciting if it was. I would be like, yeah, let's put all our money there. But you have to do that one step and say, okay, but that's not really accurate because we don't have enough information to say it is. It's not repeatable enough. And if you're like, Liz, how do I know statistical significance? There are many, many, many handy little tools out there. You can use their Excel spreadsheets. There are web pages where you can just type in your data and be like, hey, this, and you're going to see something that says your statistical significance measure. So what does it matter? Typically, you'll see things like 80%, 90%, 95%. And that says how much do you care within that band? Do you need that statistical significance to be really high? Say, hey, it needs to have a large sample size. It needs to be really accurate that this is exactly correct, that there's no bandwidth. Thank you, Mary, for sending that over. That's so helpful for everyone. Please use it if you can. It's in the chat. But those are going to be your varying levels. If you want to say, like, I don't want to give any recommendation that I can't say 100% true, you're going to pick that 95. You're going to say, hey, I want the highest level I can possibly get. If you're willing to have a little bit more wiggle room, you're willing to say, like, I'm willing to go with a little bit of an inference, a little bit of, variance, you can go with 80%. But you're kind of just saying, how exactly correct does it need to be? How much wiggle room are you willing to give the data? And the thing I find super helpful with this is sometimes I'll see a really small difference in the data, but because the data sets are so large, that like 0.5% difference was actually super statistically significant. So you might be a little bit surprised when you look at it because your gut feeling of is it statistically significant is really different than what it ends up being. So take my little like math nerd, math major self, and please use that statistical significance. It is so helpful and it's going to give you so much more data and it's going to make you feel comfortable going into those meetings and saying, like, hey, and they'll be like, but is this really true? And you'll be like, yeah, I did a statistical significance test. Like these are the things that matter and are truly statistically significant and matter. And it'll just make you feel so much stronger and more powerful and more confident in what you're doing. And it'll mean you're gonna get the results that you're saying they're gonna get. You are sure of it. You have done your statistical significance test. So please, please, please do this. It can be a little tedious, I will admit, but it's really helpful and important. And again, it's going to make you feel more confident and it's going to be better and more impactful. And you're going to see more results if you're doing this. And you're also not going to get swayed by those really big numbers. You're like, oh my God, it matters so much. That really there's not enough data to say that's the truth. And then on the other side, I will not tell you the number of times where I was like, oh, this is such a small difference, but I stick it into the statistical significance calculator. And it's like, no, Liz, this is super important. You need to be doing this. This matters so much. And I'm like, whoa, never would have thought. So do it, make yourself feel better. And also, it will really tell you if that difference matters because you'll just be surprised. I do. Like, I was a math major, I'm still surprised constantly by what I get from that calculator. And that goes into this next thing where it's like test, 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 make sure it's repeatable, make sure you're seeing the same numbers. So as you're doing this quarter to quarter to quarter, um, you might see some variance. You might be like, hey, webinars mattered when I did this last quarter and they don't anymore. Um, and so you might just realize that, hey, that doesn't matter as much as you thought it did, or maybe let's not use that same thing. If, for example, you're doing this every quarter, 3 quarters in a row, webinars matter, and then 3 quarters in a row they don't, I would review what webinars you're doing, because your new ones might not be as impactful or matter as much as the ones you were doing before. And you might have to review these webinars were really important, guys, and now you've changed your webinar strategy. Not so helpful. Or the opposite, you might find that, hey, webinars were actually hurting us. We did a major overhaul of webinars. And now suddenly they really matter. And this is why I also say to people, like, this is this is an impactful of what happened. If you want to try something new, if you want to do something different, like go for it. I can't tell you if it's going to work or not. I can only tell you what we've done. This has worked and this hasn't. So I always tell people if you have something new, if you want to try something totally different, and it's a channel that I said like hasn't really mattered much, do it. Go for it. Try something completely off the walls because I can't tell you if it's going to work or not. But once you do it, once we have all of that engagement, once you've tried it and you keep trying it, right? Don't do it for a week. Don't just do one. Do that repeatable and then it becomes measurable and then it becomes statistically significant. And you're getting that repeatable outcome. Then I can say, hey, it worked, or you know what? It didn't. But at the end of the day, we need to keep trying because otherwise we're just going to repeat what we've always done. And at some point, your buyer isn't going to respond to that anymore because people change, evolve. We like different things. There were times when people just generally were more likely to go to a webinar, or we know for years you couldn't do in person events. So keep trying, keep finding new things, and keep seeing how your audience engages. Because you might get a different audience. Your audience is going to change in age, most likely. And so that is going to change how they engage. And if you're just doing the same thing forever, you will lose some of your buyers and some of the new people that are coming into those roles. And a lot of times, again, that's repeatable outcomes. And that's also having targets for things. So anytime you launch something new, be sure you have targets. I had a wonderful, lovely job one where my job was to onboard new pieces of technology and test if they worked or not, and if we should keep purchasing them. And so what I would do is every time I would go in and I would say, these are the KPIs we need, and this is the outcome we want. And if it doesn't reach it in the time frame, then like throw it out the window. We don't need to buy this. And if it does, let's double down on this. Let's keep improving it. Let's put it into all of our strategies because the pilot worked. Um, I was lucky enough that most of the time I did this, it actually worked out. The KPIs were good. The product was wonderful. But if you don't have that going in, you're not going to at the end be able to say like it worked, because you will want to say, okay, I'm doing all of these things to improve bookings rate. I know that it takes 6 months to do that. Let's say we want to improve bookings rate by 1%, 2%, in 6 months. And now you've set that expectation with the people you just told all of this information to. So they won't come to you in a month and say, hey, what is this? You've said, this is the timing, this is the KPI I expect to improve. And if it doesn't, let's drop it. We'll know that this didn't work. But if you've done your statistical significance and you've done all of the things that you think should matter, ideally you are hitting that and you get to go and you get to be like, hey guys, I did it. Everything I did and suggested mattered. And we want to see that. That's great. Um, so again, timing, KPIs, repeatable. And a lot of this is also going to come from that statistical significance. It's going to ensure that you are getting that same outcome again and again and again. And then we're going to go to that little thing that you can't track. So we all know that influence and multi-touch attribution can only track so much. I can only track that you did something. There are going to be a million things that you see or did not do. Or you get an email and then you actually go to the website and you search it in Google. I've done that a million times. I've saw an email and I'm like, oh, I want to do that. And I don't click on the link in the email. I just search for it. That's just my buyer behavior. But now I don't actually know that that email really mattered because I didn't click on it and I didn't give that lovely marketing team the data that they wanted. I'm sorry. To whomever I did that to. So you're not going to be able to track all of that. And you're not going to be able to say, well, this person saw 500 LinkedIn ads and then they bought the product. I don't actually know who saw that. I can't track that well. I'm not a magician. If I could do that, guys, I would be making a lot more money. And I would probably not be on this webinar talking to you. I would just be locked in my tower doing all of that for everyone, and it would be lovely. So what you're going to look at is those indirect ways of doing something. And that is going to be that organic or direct. So when you're doing all of these new things, what you really want to see if you're improving, your display ads, you're trying new channels, you're doing all of these new things. What you're going to look for there is your increase in organic and direct and that net influence number increasing. So if you're getting all of these things, if people are doing it, if they're engaging in that organic and direct, they're coming to your website because they've been seeing all this stuff you've been doing before, that's where you're going to see those numbers. And that's what you need to keep track of when you know you're investing in those early things. Because remember what I talked about where at one company, it was like engage with them 6 months beforehand. I can't see everything they're doing 6 months beforehand. So some of that investment in those channels was like a hope and a prayer. And eventually we did see that that worked, but it was because we started seeing more of that engagement 6 months beforehand through organic, through direct, because we weren't able to see those ads 6 months beforehand. Um, so that is also kind of what you want to be seeing. And is your organic or your direct win rate improving now that you've done all of this stuff? Are you seeing more demos? Is demo taking up more of your influence? Or Is demo being more of your last touch, our favorite demos? How do I get more demos? Um, so once you see that happening, you can kind of say, hey, all of that stuff I was doing early on mattered because one, I proved statistically significant that they do early things. Two, I know that when they do this, they're going to go to organic or direct because I can't track them, can't say they're doing this. Or, they do click in that channel and now I'm seeing it later. I'm seeing more of those. But likely it'll be organic or direct. And so I can say, hey, all of that things we're doing early, we're seeing that improvement in organic and direct. Our organic and direct traffic is converting more. We're getting better conversion rates. We're getting more demos. Our win rate is up. And now hey, those things I can't really track, all these other pieces are improving. You can even look at site traffic and you can say, hey, we did all of this stuff 3 months later, 2 months later, whatever you have found your time frame to be between when you launch something and when you see that increase in spike traffic. And this is kind of annoying and you have to do it a lot to see it. But if you keep track and you're like, hey, we started ads on these times, and you start looking at your traffic and seeing if you see correlated increases, you can say, hey, I know it takes 1 month, 2 months, 3 months to see this. So now you're going in, you're saying, hey, this is the improvement I expect to see in this time frame. Because if you give people a time frame, they are willing to give you more patience. Um, and again, if you have those KPIs in that time frame and you have that like nice testing schedule that you can hand out to everyone, they have a lot more trust, they feel a lot more confident. Um, then you can say, this stuff that I can't track, these things that I can't say they're directly doing do matter. I'm seeing it happen later. And this again is that segment optimization. Who are these people that matter? I'm comparing that win rate, I'm comparing that time to close, and I'm saying this is what matters. These are the segments that matter. These are the segments that convert the most. And these are the channels that those segments that convert the most are doing. And then again, that benchmark against goal. What are you thinking will happen because of this? These are the channels I'm saying will improve the time to books. So you'll do more of those and you'll say, okay, we're seeing more engagements there. Net time's done. I'm not really looking at that dollar value attached to that channel. And you'll kind of see here that I never do that. I never really care about the dollar value attached to each channel. It's nice, it's there. Sometimes I use that as my conversion rate from pipeline to bookings. But generally, I ignore that pretty broadly. I know like that's what your attribution software is telling you, like, ooh, look at this chart, look at these numbers, you can share it with everyone. That doesn't show much except that you're doing things, and that doesn't help you optimize at all because you're gonna run into the same problem of like, oh, I need more demo requests. You can't do anything with that. So I apologize. I have like kind of gone all the way to the end and just babbled on. So thank you. It was so great to talk to all of you. You can look at these rest of the slides. And also, like, please, please, please feel free to reach out to me and ask questions on my LinkedIn or, track me down. I am happy to answer any and all questions. I hope this was helpful. I hope you can walk away and take like some piece of this and use it and feel a little more confident in your attribution and not just using that like $1 value, that one chart to show that you're doing something and use to optimize with all of this lovely, lovely, lovely attribution data that you do have sitting there waiting for you.
Liz, thank you so much. This was so insightful. I hope you guys picked up a thing or two. We will share the deck from this webinar so you guys can apply those slides. Liz, again, appreciate your time. This was super insightful and nice to have a math major talking about attribution. The one plug that I will do is that if you're using CaliberMind, you can drill down into things and slice and dice in many ways. It's never just a dashboard, but you can do it in an Excel spreadsheet if that's where your heart desires, right? And Liz, I know that's what you're doing. Again, thank you so much. For those of you who attend Hitchhiker's Guide regularly. We got an exciting session next week on using RevOps as your strategic center of executive alignment. Andrew Dimmick, another great friend of mine, super knowledgeable person, will come and talk to us how to broker a peace treaty between marketing, sales, CS, and everybody else on the leadership team through unbiased data. Again, thank you all for being here with us today. You can connect with Liz on LinkedIn. We'll send out the deck, and we'll see you next time on Hitchhiker's Guide in March.